Reimagining Success, Episode 55. You're listening to Reimagining Success, the podcast where we help you reimagine your future, designing a life and career beyond the 9 to 5 that allows you the freedom, flexibility and fulfillment that you've been dreaming of. I'm your host, Anna Lundberg. Now, let's get started on those dreams. Hello there and welcome back as we continue to reimagine success, looking at the 5 L's model. Now, this is a model, again, that is intended to help us all to look beyond that conventional definition of success, focused on work and career and prestige and salary increases and learning things in our jobs and getting that certification and whatever it might be, and considering all different areas, or the important areas at least, of our lives in more of a holistic way. So if you have missed the last few episodes, then do go back and listen to those. I've introduced the 5 L's model, if that's not something that you've come across before, being part of my community. We started with the first L, the second L, and today we're on the third L. So a brief recap, and if you've been listening for a while, you can say this with me now. It'll start rolling off your tongue as it does of mine. Live, wellness and well-being. Love, relationships and romance. Learn, development and growth, and that's what we're here to learn about today, haha. Lead, career and impact, and laugh, fun and spontaneity. So again, these are 5 areas that I found in my own experience and working with clients are really important areas to consider beyond that narrow domain of just work. Now, let's start then with learn, development and growth, which is what we're here to talk about this week. Now, what does this mean to you? Are you a fan of learning? Do you think with horror back to those days of school when you had to do homework and sit still in class and you had to go to all those lectures at university, whatever it might be? Obviously, the conventional definition of success, again, and the sort of conveyor belt path that I've talked about often tends to be that we go to school, we, in my case, have this kind of good girl syndrome of getting those good grades and getting the right answer and pleasing the teachers and getting the tick and good girl Anna and all these things. Of course, we then need those grades to do well, to get into the next school, to get into university. We have to do well there to get a job. And a job then, certainly at the corporation where I was, we were compared against each other in terms of our peer performance. And that then defined whether we got a promotion or a salary increase and so on. So there can be quite a bit of negative energy, I guess, surrounding this idea of learning in the traditional sense. Interestingly as well, I think a lot of us are tied to, again, those conventional definitions of learning, in the sense that whenever I talk to someone about maybe changing career and think about doing something differently, almost always they'll go by default to, I have to retrain. I have to do an MBA. I have to do this new course and get certified and qualified and all sorts. Now, that may well be the case if you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, if you want to be a psychiatrist, a therapist, if you want to work in a particular field that, yes, you do, it's a regulated industry and you do actually need a particular qualification, it's very possible that learning for you will be some kind of formal qualification. And maybe you get a lot of satisfaction from going to a formal course and maybe you were that good girl like me and you love that and you're happy to sit there at the desk and, pay lots of money to work with others. I have a acquaintance, I guess, shall we say, who I've seen, has very much sort of amassed a list of accolades in this sense, going from Oxford to Cambridge to some incredible jobs in different, prestigious companies in the civil service and going to Stanford and so on and so on. And if that is something that's important to you and that you value, again, this is your definition of success, and that's incredible and good for you, and that's something that's important to consider. However, I'd love to encourage you to think beyond those traditional ideas of learning and really think broadly about learning in the sense of just that, being curious, experiencing new things, trying new things, getting out of your comfort zone. And even if you do need to or want to learn a new skill, doing that in a less traditional way, perhaps with an online free course, perhaps going to evening classes somewhere, so perhaps sort of a formal setting, but a bit less sort of hardcore than doing like a 2-year or 4-year master's or something. Perhaps it's finding a mentor to work with, working with a coach. Perhaps it's sort of a really specific area that you want to focus on in your business, maybe sales, maybe some area of marketing you need to learn about, or perhaps it's a bigger picture you want to consider. Maybe it's, something more fun, like learning to play an instrument or working on a language, whatever that might be. So again, as we talk about learning, we're really talking about this bigger picture, much broader than just sort of going to school and university. Now, I am a big believer in lifelong learning. I like to think that I've retained that sort of childish sense of curiosity that we all start out with, and exploring new things, setting goals, continuing to grow. That's all so important, and I hope you agree with me. And again, this is important whether we're talking about really profound, deep self-awareness on the one hand and personal development, or learning to play the ukulele, which, yes, I have done. Now, there's nothing worse than feeling stuck and stagnant and not doing anything about it. And again, in the context of career change and potentially getting out of a comfort zone, setting up a business and growing a business, this is really important. And it's not, I've just been doing the 9-to-5 escape plan over in the Facebook group, and we talked a lot about the fact that changing from working in a job to setting up a business is not just about that initial change. It's a massive decision. It's an important big step, but it is just the first step. And this getting stuck and feeling stagnant can come later on in our businesses too. And assuming we're in this for the long haul, this is something that we need to keep alive. We need to keep learning. We need to be proactive about staying relevant in a fast changing environment, society, economy, and make sure that we are really being intentional and proactive about learning new skills, staying on top of the latest developments, and really being a leader, essentially, as we continue to push ourselves, grow, and develop. So as we've been doing these past few weeks, I'd love for you to stop for a moment, maybe pause my voice as well, just have a think about where do you feel you are today? How do you feel about this area? How important is it to you? Are you also a fan of lifelong learning? Do you have that negative association with school and you don't want to be told what to do? Maybe you really think about formal learning in the sense of academic qualifications, or even on the job training that you get from your company. You think of these really expensive courses and you couldn't possibly afford to pay to go to these events and conferences and courses now that you're working for yourself. So what does this area mean for you? How important is it? And let's ask as well, where are you today in terms of this area of learning? Do you feel really stuck and, you haven't gotten out of your comfort zone for a long time? You're not challenging yourself. You could do your job. You could do whatever you're doing in your business right now, blindfolded, not particularly inspiring, not exciting. And, it's almost too easy. You can do it in your sleep. Where are you on a scale of 1 to 10 in this area in terms of learning, developing, growing, being curious and having fun with it? So let me give you a few prompts now once you've had a thought about it, what it means to you and so on. And these are just some questions to consider, but really something to encourage you to look beyond, again, that traditional sense of having to do a formal qualification or course or expensive university education or whatever it might be. So first of all, do you have a good understanding of who you are and what's important to you? So yes, this is a pretty important one for me in terms of personal development, understanding who you are. It's a big question, really understanding your values, big picture priorities in your life and so on. That's really an important area of learning about yourself, having that self-awareness. So I'd love for you to start there. Are you addressing any major fears or concerns in your life? So we talk a lot about mindset. We do, free trainings over in the Facebook group on this. And of course, it's always a core part of my both individual coaching and group coaching programs. There's usually a whole module on this, addressing things like fear of failure, fear of making mistakes, fear of looking ridiculous and being judged by other people, concerns around money and so on. Again, if we think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this after sort of the absolute basic physiological needs of water and food and so on, we have that sense of safety and security, and financial security, for example, is really important. Emotional, do we feel secure and safe wherever we are in the world in our life? Do you invest in upskilling in different areas of your life? So is this an area that you think is important to you? Are you actually investing? And investing, by the way, means money, of course, but it also means time, it means effort and energy and so on. I asked a few months ago in my Facebook group, how much have you spent on, training and personal development? And of course, people are at different stages of this, and maybe you're just new to this idea of sort of taking proactive control of your own career and working for yourself and so on. And then maybe someone else has been doing this for years and completely understands the value of this. But the range was everything from nothing, I only invest my time in this. And actually, some people say I can get a lot of value from free stuff that exists online, which is absolutely the case. I provide, as you can tell, the podcast, Facebook group, all sorts of free resources, trainings, and so on. So there's a lot of free content out there, which is absolutely fine as a really good start. Some people invested maybe a few £100, and several had invested a few thousand, and then, a small handful had then invested, more sort of in the 5 figures and so on. So, just something to consider. Are you investing in your personal development, your growth, your business learning, and so on? Do you read a lot? And reading, of course, can be books, Kindle, or paperback, or hardback for that matter, blogs. Do you listen to podcasts? So are you really absorbing information? Now, I'm going to say here that I'm maybe a bit unusual, that I'm really not a fan of the news. So, of course, I read, well, I say of course, but I have the Google app, for example, on my phone, which really tailors content to me. I also look at articles on LinkedIn. I do a lot of reading and exploring and so on, and listen to podcasts. But I don't just listen to the negative news about war and famine and politics and so on. Now, you might say that I'm naive, but in my opinion, and there's a lot of, studies on this, this is not something that is actually, developing me in a positive way. It's creating unnecessary sort of fear and concerns. And unless I can actually do something about that, it's not a productive, constructive way of doing it. Now, yes, it sounds like I'm completely out of touch, but I can guarantee you that if something important happens in the world, somebody will tell me. So not too concerned there. But, that's a decision for you to make. But I'm really talking here about learning in whatever sense that means for you, listening, being open, aware to the important big trends, big developments, whether in your industry and so on, or, to do with maybe if you have children, schooling, education and society and so on. Do you feel like you're learning right now? So do you feel like, again, are you completely stagnant and, I know everything and I'm an expert and I'm getting quite complacent? Or are you actually learning new things? Do you have clear goals that you're working towards, which, is such an important thing in coaching and in career and business, but that is the way we grow. And when I started as a coach, this was really a core part of the work that I did, setting those goals, really working towards those. And that is how we push ourselves, challenge ourselves, learn and grow, both personally and again, from a business perspective. Do you feel like you're moving forward? Again, I keep coming back to the sense of feeling stuck and stagnant, but feeling sort of stationary, plodding along, that's quite soul destroying ultimately. So do you feel like there's movement in your life, that you're moving in the direction, hopefully, of a definition of success that you have defined for yourself? Do you have an outlet for creative expression in your life? Creativity is something that comes up again and again for people, leaving the 9 to 5. I can't tell you how incredible it is to hear in my group at the moment that I think without exception, everybody in the group has some kind of so-called secret talent, whether they've now wanting to become, or they have even become, in the case of some people who've been working the program, an artist who has an exhibition in New York, or a secret wannabe rock star playing the drums, or someone who is playing the bass in a stage play in a couple of weeks. So, that creativity, whether it's art or music or whatever it might be, is so important. Do you challenge yourself to get out of your comfort zone? One of my core concepts, everything you've ever wanted, is one step outside your comfort zone. So are you really saying yes to things that usually you'd feel a bit uncomfortable about, but you're going to do it anyway because, hey, let's try this and, feel a little bit insecure just to learn and do something exciting, a bit of danger, a bit of adventure? And do you have a coach or mentor to support and guide you? Again, it's not necessarily about that formal learning, about having the teacher-student relationship. It's about surrounding yourself with role models, whether it's someone who's hugely famous and you're listening to them on a podcast or watching them on YouTube or wherever it might be, reading their book, or someone who's just a few steps ahead of you, who you can really look up to and think, wow, they've actually done quite a few of the things I want to do. It's completely feasible. It's within my reach. So let me learn from that person. And, there is a lot of free content out there, but I always say there is a point at which we do need to sort of shut out that noise, focus, choose one, maybe 2 people or sort of sources that we want to really zone in on, and then sort of single-mindedly focus on that person's learning and follow that process. And then, once we've achieved that, we can move on to a different area, different type of coaching or different type of step-by-step process, whatever it might be. It's so easy to get distracted by all the noise, again, of different ideas, different things. Even in business, from the beginning, I always got confused. Some people said webinars and email marketing, you have to do this and that and the other, and you end up doing nothing or just a little bit of everything. So, really important to find that handful of people who will support you, cheer you on, hold you accountable, but also guide you. Someone who is a little bit ahead of you, who can really show you the way, I suppose, and help you avoid some of those mistakes. So again, looking back on this year, what have you done? What haven't you done in this area? How are you feeling about it now? And then what do you want to do differently next year? And specifically, of course, really thinking about specific goals to set, specific actions. I'd like to find a mentor or a coach to work with in this particular area as of January, or I want to get a head start now, which of course is even better. I want to start listening to podcasts. I just got an email from someone saying they've stopped listening to the radio and they've replaced that with podcasts, for example. So why not? Reading more books, for example, or is there some particular area of the business that you'd like to really dive deep into, in which case a formal course in that area might be important? So this is something to think about, whether it is in business and career. Again, I've learned to play the ukulele in Hawaii a few years ago. I, from time to time, always come back to learning languages, and Spanish has been the one that's been most consistent these past years. Japanese got a little bit sort of crazy. It wasn't as useful after I'd been to Japan. I figured, Spain, Spanish is a bit closer. Lots of people around the world speak Spanish. So it could be just for fun. We'll talk about fun later. That's the 5th L. But in the meantime, something that actually is helping to grow you as an individual, personally, professionally. So that's it for this week, learn, development and growth. And we're back next week for the 4th L, lead, career and impact. Really important one, of course, but again, it's just one of the L's. So enjoy this week and I'll see you back here next week. Bye for now. This podcast is all about reimagining success. Now, we tend to have a very narrow focus on career and work, and as business owners, we get caught up in the hustle and the search for the next client, quickly losing sight of why we started in the first place. To help you think more broadly about success in your life and in your business, grab my free resource at onestepoutside.com/success audit biz. That's onestepoutside.com/success audit biz.